alpaca.com.
The nine kind of hilarious lessons from 99 days on a COVID ventilator.
When you're gonna die, hide your sexual naughty things away from your parents.
Oh.
I chose to go scary. Go scary or go home.
All right, we're going live. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. It is Monday. It looks like it's going to rain out. It's very cloudy. We are, this is the beauty of live radio. Sometimes the sound is gives you feedback and you just have to go. And then you don't have the promo music that you usually have. It's a good start to a Monday morning. And usually I would say hi to my producer extraordinaire, Jane Matnair, on the board, but she's trying to fix the board right now.
With the help of Brian Kelly, who is standing over my shoulder as we try and find out where that reverb is coming from.
And we're gonna fix it. And if not, we're just have a really fun, chaotic show.
Yes, perfect way to kick off the week.
All right. Well, one of the things that kicked off the week, I think as of yesterday, but also probably today, is that UW-Madison freshman move-in begins. And so it's the signal that the summer is ending. And despite this very humid weather that it feels like we have right now after storms yesterday, fall is around the corner.
It is.
Which means sweater weather is around the corner. And so we wanted to kick off today with a guest who has bridged comfy sweaters and Badger pride and a very good cause. Katie Lorenz is the founder and CEO of Campo Alpaca, which is a social impact company that creates ethical alpaca apparel and empowers women in Peru through flexible work arrangements, fair wages, and growth opportunities. Katie, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
How are you doing this Monday morning?
Doing great. Great way to start the week.
Absolutely. Really cool. And you are in one of the sweaters right now. So clearly the air conditioning must be strong where you're at.
Yes, I do love the air conditioning in my apartment. This is like part of my uniform, like all year round. It's good.
That's great. And so I think Jane was actually the one, you were featured in Cap Times a month or so ago. And she was like, how fun are these? And I sent them immediately to my mother, who loves, I think the amount of like Wisconsin and Packer, and like she loves a theme. And especially now that I live in Wisconsin again, anything that shows our Badger pride is, I'm sure everyone will be getting one of these for Christmas. But so how did this all start?
Great question. It's a bit of a random story. Basically from a vacation down to Peru, I was switching jobs to another company. I'm a consultant at Accenture as my full-time job. And I was switching from Accenture to a different firm, and I wanted to travel for about 2 months. Originally, I was actually supposed to go to Thailand, but then some kind person, stranger, told me that, it's monsoon season in Thailand in August. When you're thinking about going, you might want to rethink that one. So I did. I asked Google where I should go in August. Google actually sent me to Peru. Very random, but
that is so, I didn't know you could ask Google that, but I guess did you like ask it audibly, or did you just type it in?
Just type it in. Just type it in. Yeah, peak season. It's great.
Hey, Google.
So I traveled around Peru for about 2 months. This was back in 2014, but few things happened. Didn't realize it was the start of Campo, but it was. I categorically hate sweaters. I think they're heavy and itchy, and like I run really warm, and so I just never wear them. But down in Peru, like you're in the markets and stuff, it's like piled high with like beautiful designs of like alpaca sweaters just everywhere. And so one of my traveling buddies was like, you got to get an alpaca sweater. It's like what you do. And I'm like, no, I'm good. And then finally someone forced me into an alpaca sweater. And it was just like, oh, okay, this breathes. It's like lightweight. Climbed Machu Picchu in it, ended up getting alpaca stuff for everyone for Christmas that year, like had to get another duffel bag to bring back to the US, and just fell in love with this stuff. It was so great. And then me being a crazy Badger, I'm like, football season's coming up. I want this sweater, but Badger, like how cool would that be? And between the alpaca, the Badger, then I met these really cool ladies that were knitting and weaving it, really entrepreneurial mindset. And yeah, I'm like, can you make this for us? And I like drew the Wisconsin sweater while I was down there and just gave it to some random person with money. And I don't think she expected me to come back to get the sweater 3 days later. I definitely didn't expect her to have it finished, but we both held up our end of the bargain. And that's kind of how the whole thing started. This was back in 2014, just an idea, but I was consulting down in South America for the following 2 years. And I just like kept going back to Peru and eventually remembered the idea and started to pursue it in about 2017.
Katie, I can't believe she finished a sweater in 3 days.
3 days. That's
I know.
incredible. Holy moly.
She's got some help. They're also not hand knit, so that makes a big difference. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So what is that? So now that it's 5-ish years old, what is that process like as far as, I'm assuming most of your clientele and customers are Wisconsin, or at least in the United States, but you're still having all the people who are making the women who are making the sweaters are in Peru. So what is that like as far as bridging that national divide?
Yeah. Well, one thing that's nice is that we're on the same time zone. So that makes it really easy. I've been working with the same groups of artisans since I started in 2017. So at this point, I call them my Peruvian family. So we keep in touch. I go down to Peru like twice a year.
Oh, there we go.
Mainly to like get other products and stuff designed. But for the most part, we can communicate on WhatsApp, keep each other updated, send money. Honestly, a lot thanks to technology, we're able to do things from across the equator. So that makes it a lot easier. All the products are end-to-end made down in Peru. That was part of the reason for the start of the company was I love the idea of finding artisan groups that were in need of employment opportunities, specifically flexible ones. So I wanted to have the products made end to end down there. And then obviously we just ship them up. But to try to be eco-friendly, we do like consolidate the shipments and try to do like 1 or 2 big shipments a year and get like everything that way.
Got it. So how many different women are you actually employing?
Ooh, echoey. So we actually don't employ any of them. So they run their own companies down there. Each artisan group is a little bit different. Some of them I personally like helped set up and organize. Others were existing small businesses or family run businesses that are looking to grow. But at this point, we are impacting or working with about 20 different families and 6 different artisan groups.
That's incredible. And so when you get those big orders, as far as so basically it runs out, right? So as far as like if we're getting into the fall and you need a certain size, once it's out of stock, is it basically SOL until the next shipment comes in?
Yeah, basically. It's not fast fashion. Not what I wanted to do. It's also kind of problematic for the folks at the beginning of the supply chain if you're moving that quickly through clothing production in particular. They do sell out. We've been doing pre-orders for both our Wisconsin and our Green Bay lines because those are typically the ones that sell out. So people can like reserve theirs in advance, and crossing all of our fingers that our shipment will actually arrive hopefully next week. And then we can start like shipping out the pre-orders.
Got it. So what are some of the biggest sellers?
Oh man. Well, definitely the Wisconsin line, like some of the originals, we did like the zigzag, but then also just like kind of a vintage look is what I was going for. So some of those original ones are still definitely our best sellers. Outside of the Wisconsin line though, alpaca socks are incredibly popular. Those also sell out very, very quickly. We are in the process of actually looking for new suppliers for that one. I call it like the alpaca starter product. I'm like, if I can get you alpaca socks, then you're going to become hooked, and then you're going to want other alpaca things. Seems to be the trend.
So what is the actual, like, if you can describe it? Because I think obviously we just had the Wisconsin State Fair and you see the sheep and you can go there and you can see the sheep get shorn. Is that the past tense word? And so how much does that differ with an alpaca? Do they still get shorn in a similar fashion? Do they feel functionally different when you touch an alpaca versus a lamb or a sheep? Because I think, so that is like, even from when it's still on the animal, it feels really different.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that makes people potentially allergic to like wool or sheep's wool feel really itchy is something called lanolin, and alpaca naturally doesn't have any lanolin in it. Typically, that's what gives you the itching factor. And so alpaca is actually considered to be a hypoallergenic wool for a lot of people. Not everyone, but for a lot of people, you don't get any of the itch at all because there's no lanolin in it. Personally, I could definitely feel it on the animal as well. Just alpaca fur is just so, so soft. They are shorn the same way. Alpacas are once a year and they get shorn. They get like a huge blanket off of the animal basically once a year. And then it gets sorted, categorized, and then spun and washed and dried a whole bunch of times until it gets turned into yarn.
Interesting. So, and are they herd animals in a similar way as far as they just kind of flock together and hang
Yeah.
out and they're pretty casual?
They're very chill. Yes,
Yeah.
they're definitely herd animals. They love to be around other animals, other alpacas for sure, but they're also really adaptable. So there's a bunch of folks down in Peru, if they're raised as farm animals, they'll behave that way. But if they're raised as pets, they'll kind of be more like dogs almost, like a lot more comfortable with like human touch, human interaction. They do that with the show alpacas here as well. Yes, that's a thing. Show alpacas. Actually, they didn't have it this year, which was really sad because it's so much fun. But there is a national alpaca fest, and it's held in Wisconsin typically every single year.
Really?
Yeah.
We have alpaca fest.
Alpacas. They get awards. It's really fun.
Oh my gosh. I know you may not know this because it's just popping into my head. What is the functional difference between like 'cause alpaca and llamas, different animals, but look kind of similar?
Yes, very true. That's actually one of the most common questions that we get. We do pop-up markets like every single weekend from like September through the end of the year. And that's such a common question. Oh, I actually have this behind me. So this guy is a llama. But the difference is llamas are going to be bigger. They're going to have more like banana shaped long ears. They have longer necks. They're also different functionally. So they're more like beasts of burden. So they're the ones that are going to like carry heavy loads. And they actually have llamas to protect the alpaca herd. Like rule of thumb, don't mess around with llamas. Alpacas are generally pretty friendly.
All right, good to know. All right, so where can people go to make their order, their Christmas shopping, do it early, and buy these amazing alpaca Wisconsin, either Badger or Packer sweaters?
Yeah, of course. So our website is www.campoalpaca.com. It's CAMPOALPACA.com. And we also are on social media, but beyond the Wisconsin stuff, there's socks, blankets, basically anything warm and fuzzy, it's probably on the website.
Amazing. Katie Lorenz, thank you so much for joining us. We will link, I will definitely share this on all our social media so people can order it. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Listen to Max Inc. Radio every Saturday and Sunday, 6 p.m. to midnight. Download the podcast at maxincradio.com. We are local music.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. This is Kristin, Brey. We're having some technical issues today. Maybe we're just not going to have bumper music,
Which is fine.
That
It breaks my heart.
I know,
But we can live without it. But yes, we are working behind the scenes
working behind
frantically
the
to try and
scenes.
get this resolved.
that's and sometimes it just happens, and you have to live with it because this is
Live radio.
This is live radio and not a podcast, so we can't just stop and decide we're going to do it later.
Let's edit.
It's and so. But I didn't even, because I was so thrown off when we first started. This whole show today was going to be a back to school theme because, as we said, UW Madison students
back in the dorms.
moving in. I don't know. Class must start next week, or maybe they starts. I don't know exactly when the UW system starts,
You would
but
think they would start the day after Labor Day.
yeah, that
Next
probably makes
Monday
sense.
is
But I know
Labor
there's
Day.
a lot of kids in K through 12 who are going back to school
Yeah.
this week, and so it is a back to school theme, which feels wild because I don't know. I mean, the summer went by. For me, the summer went by very quickly, and so I'm not fully ready to get into sweater weather. I mean, I
Yeah.
do want to buy one of Campo alpaca sweaters
Me
because they're
too.
so cute.
It's so cool.
And it is also for a good cause as far as employing or paying women who are in Peru, providing employment opportunities. But I love summer. And so I love being able to walk out of the house in shorts and not be cold. And I know that that time is coming to an end.
It is coming to an end. It is the cycle of life. My
Yes,
friend.
but to be fair, I will say I was thinking about this over the weekend. In that, when you're in California, especially in even San Francisco, but certainly LA, it's hard to remember like how time passes because it's just always nice.
Sure.
And there was something that thought came across my brain this weekend was, oh, well, then it will be fall and then it will feel like time is actually passing. And I'm also excited for it to get cold so everything slows down a little bit so I can actually
Take a breath.
not even that, but I actually took a breath and looked at our garage and how much stuff we just left in there. And we're like, we'll deal with it later when we moved in. And I was like, looking at our calendar right now, I was like, I don't know when we're going to go through this. And so
You're gonna amaze yourself though, Kristin, in how long you can get by without any of that stuff, and then realize
You can just
do
get
we
rid of it?
ultimately need this stuff?
I know.
We have a whole basement full of things that we've done just fine without for the last decade. I don't know why it's still in there.
Well, that was my plan when we first were moving. I was like, he has more stuff than I do because I was able to leave California when I got back in 2020 with only 10 boxes. And I was really proud
That's
of myself.
amazing.
And so most of this stuff, I'll take credit for some of it because I have accumulated some, but a lot of it was still his. And that was set out. I was like, we can get rid of things. Let's not move anything to the house that we don't actually need. And then inevitably, like it does for most people, I think, everything got shoved in a box and we'll deal with it. We'll get rid of it once we move in and unpack.
Right.
And that didn't happen either.
No, it didn't.
So it's just sitting in there.
I had some help over the years with that because we've been flooded a couple of times. So that really helps the entire purging process when you have a foot of water in your basement and things have been marinating in it for a day or so. So it's like all those boxes of pictures from 1970 had to go.
Oh, you just threw them away?
You have to. It's all, it's saturated and it's floodwaters.
Oh, yeah.
And
Okay.
even if it's clean water, that's not something that you want to take chances with. So.
I'm going to out my mom right now. She's going to get mad at me, but she inherited all of the pictures of her mom's photos.
Oh.
And she, forever, the way you took pictures, you didn't have them on their phone just accumulating, and then you had to have some others like Gemini or some app that can help you clean them out. It was, you had physical pictures, and my mom got doubles of everything.
God.
And of course, also, because you couldn't trust if you got a good one or not, there's 10 versions of the same picture that all got printed. and these pictures, these like boxes and boxes of pictures have been moved from Madison to California, back to Wisconsin Rapids, and they're sitting in the attic. And I think every year it's that question of the intention of, we're going to go through them, we're going to scrapbook. And I know that's just going to be something that I inherit eventually. And I don't know if I'm going to have the
Pleasure?
the stomach to get rid of them without having to want to go through them and actually try to do something with them. But hopefully I'll have money. I can just hire someone to do that.
It's painful. It is painful to have to decide. And when my mother passed away and she had photos of all her grandchildren and entire books of all the grandkids, well, they're all in their 30s now.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up with all that stuff, and I ended up throwing most of it away. And all these old I mean, do people even buy photo albums anymore? That just seems like such an ancient thing.
Well, Mike asked me that last night. He was like, where can I get pictures printed? And I felt as though the last time that I tried to get pictures printed to put in frames through Walgreens, I didn't love how they turned out.
Oh, no kidding.
Well, I just thought that they didn't, what feels like the resolution of picture that our phones take and how high quality the camera is in your phone, the way that they printed out, they looked kind of blurry. And so I don't know how those get transferred anymore, like how the files get transferred and printed. And so I said there probably is a better option as far as getting them printed, because he wanted to bring a picture to his grandfather, because we took a bunch of pictures on our wedding day over at the Schlitz Park, because there's literally a Samson Square.
Oh, cool.
So we took pictures there, and
cool.
then we took pictures with the big mural behind us that said "Welcome to Milwaukee." And because his grandfather worked for Schlitz for his entire career, and so he wanted to get them printed off and take a framed photo over to his grandpa. But I didn't even know where you can get them printed off, let alone get them printed off and fill up a photo album.
There must be an app of some kind where you can print them at home, you would think.
But then you need the printer.
Yeah,
and the red paper.
Yes, and the glossy paper. And yes,
I don't know.
It's
Well,
never easy.
If you know and you're listening, or if there's anything else you want to tell us, give us a call, text in 844-967-2789. That's 844-96-PARTY. When we come back, we'll get back on the back to school train, because there's two big things I think happening for college campuses that we should be aware of. This is As It Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
K540 AM, Brookfield's choice for News Talk Radio. Streaming 24/7 at WAUKradio.com.
Let me be real. The one thing about Matt Flynn Direct, the show, is that we cut through the baloney. We talk about history. We talk about the hard facts. We don't just soothe people's feelings with a lot of baloney. The blunt truth is that Manchin and Sinema keep whittling this thing down and obstructing it. I do not believe that Manchin would like to see anything go through on soft infrastructure.
Matt Flynn Direct airs weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m.
The radio show your mother warned you about.
Actual tyranny of a dictator. Dictator's going to dictate. Putin. And what did Trump do? Trump kneeled to the man. Embarrassing Republicans. And you're still with the guy? This is your front runner in 2024? You've been smoking some of Mike Lindell's crack. What are you thinking?
They're the GCCCP. We are the devil's advocates.
Live weekday afternoons from
I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. According to court documents, the Justice Department's review has ended of potentially privileged documents seized from former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida this month. It identified a limited set of materials that potentially contain attorney-client privileged information. White House advisor John Kirby says the White House had no role in the review of the Mar-a-Lago documents.
It is an appropriate action for the director and the intelligence community to undertake. Again, I'd let them speak to the details of this.
The filing from the department follows a judge's weekend order indicating she was inclined to grant the Trump legal team request for a special master who would oversee the review of documents taken during the August 8th search of the Mar-a-Lago estate and ensure that any that might be protected by claims of legal privilege be set aside. I'm Ed Donahue.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
For Civic Media, I'm Luke Mathers with your headlines. On Friday, Assembly Speaker Robin Vos sent a signed letter to Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway, stating that the subpoenas sent to her by the Republican-led Office of Special Counsel have been withdrawn and all obligations to them have been terminated. Mayors and election officials around Wisconsin received similar letters on Friday, signaling an end to the 2020 election review conducted by Michael Gableman, who was fired from overseeing the Office of Special Counsel 2 weeks ago. That office has charged Wisconsin taxpayers more than $1.2 million over the past 14 months, but that number is expected to continue to rise with some legal bills still outstanding. The Milwaukee Brewers won their weekend series against the Chicago Cubs 2-1 by winning yesterday afternoon 9-7. Scattered thunderstorms expected today with a 40% chance for rain and a high of 83 degrees. Clear to partly cloudy skies this evening with an overnight low of 59 degrees. You're listening to the Shaw 101 FM WAUK 540 AM.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. We think we've figured out the issues.
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
Yes.
But now we have a phone call. This Pat Stapleton?
Pat from Wind Lake. Hi, Pat. You had some clues about printing pictures, right?
I do, as a matter of fact. I had collected, my parents and grandparents had created quite a few pictures during their lifetime and during my childhood. And in a bit of anger, because of therapy I was going through, I got rid of all of them. Come to say 40 years later, I really regret it.
Oh.
So, more caution. Particularly if yours are of more happier occasions, it was just, it's my history, and I kind of regret that.
Yeah, I mean, I totally sympathize as far as it's one thing to try to categorize and the process of actually trying to work with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But really missing it if it's gone. Thanks so much for the call, Pat. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't think I would have the stomach to throw it away.
But you can't keep everything, and you certainly can't keep multiples of everything.
But you can digitize a lot of stuff
Yes,
now,
you can.
too.
Yes, you can.
And again, I would hire someone to do it because I don't think I would have.
You got to be a patient person. One of my sisters did all of that, and she loves that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But it took her weeks. It took her weeks.
All right. Well, that was a great little tangent that we had there because this was supposed to be a back to school episode.
Well, it's been a challenging Monday.
It is, welcome to Monday. It's fine. We have good spirits.
We're good.
But since we knew that we were going to have Katie Lorenz from Campo Alpaca on to talk about her fun sweaters, I started thinking about some of the other challenges or excitement or enthusiasm and all the different things happening when kids are going back to college. And one thing I hadn't even thought of, but is a glaring obstacle, is monkeypox.
It's out there.
I think it's been something that has popped up in the news, and it's, of course, something that is disproportionately been affecting men who have sex with men. And I think those of us, while it's not a sexually transmitted disease, it's something that you can get through fabric, through
close
contact. It's not as contagious as a respiratory virus like COVID, but it is something that is more contagious than you have to exchange fluids. And so it's something that has been in the news, but I don't think has been top of mind, certainly not for me, besides wanting to report on it every once in a while on the show. But you think about college, and it's not just even the sex part of college, which is plenty.
That is a factor.
That is a factor.
I believe that's a factor.
Especially if you think about freshmen who are out of the house for the first time ever. So there's part of that, but it's also living in really close quarters, because the time to isolate is long with monkeypox. It's like up to 4 weeks.
Oh my goodness, I had no idea.
Yeah, it's a really long time.
Wow.
And what I was reading over the weekend is that college campuses don't really have a ton of like a strong plan right now as far as how they're gonna
handle
this, because almost entirely, if not entirely, colleges are no longer online. Like, you're back in person. There's not the option for virtual classes anymore, and the professors who are doing, the joint or dual delivery of lectures. And so the guidance that they're getting from health departments as far as how are we going to isolate when students need to isolate, how are we going to help them? Because
where are you going to put them?
Where are you going to put them? I mean, you think about how small dorm rooms are, and you share it sometimes with a stranger and you're right next to them. So where do you put them if they need to isolate for somewhere between 2 to 4 weeks? How are they going to get their schoolwork? There's also, I think there's concerns as far as how to talk about it, because it is an issue that so far has been adversely or disproportionately affecting certain populations versus others. But does that change when you get into a very sex-driven, party-driven, all of the things you do as a very social college student, that it will affect more people than the population it has been affecting? But largely, it seems like there isn't
a plan.
I
don't understand how, after everything that we've gone through with the beginning of COVID in 2020, late 2019, 2020, there aren't any of those protocols that can be readjusted to fit this situation.
I mean, I would think that there has to be, because even you think about COVID how were they isolating?
I want to say that they put some kids in hotel rooms. Didn't they have?
That sounds vaguely familiar.
Right?
In Madison, at least, I feel like that was part of it.
I think the kids who
a lot of kids just got sent home in 2020.
Right.
And then, but even at the fall of 2020, I remember, because that's when I had a bunch of interns and they all went to Madison, and they were back on campus, but a lot of the classes were virtual. But they were still living with their roommates and et cetera. And I can't remember now what people were doing as they got sick and had to isolate, if they just stayed in their room. But again, if you're in a dorm room, at least the dorm rooms I remember ever seeing, it's 2 beds.
Right. And maybe 2 desks.
And then you share a bathroom with the whole floor.
Yes, exactly. It's very glamorous, at least where I went to school.
So that was one big thing that I think, is it, as of right now, is it as pervasive as COVID? No, but I think every state besides Wyoming has had over 14,000 cases.
That's far more than I anticipated.
Yeah. And so, just for everyone, if they need to know, a reminder that the symptoms of monkeypox are an unexplained rash that develops in hard, round, fluid or pus-filled lesions, a fever, swollen lymph nodes, muscle aches, and a headache. And so, if you get any of those symptoms, just be aware that it's something to go see your doctor about. And if you have questions about monkeypox, you can reach out to your local health department.
Can I just say, there are good reasons for you guys to watch the live stream. And some of them are just the facial expressions, I think, that both of us make when we say certain things. So pus-filled lesions,
There's certain words that feel so much dirtier saying that it's like, am I allowed to say this on the radio?
You can say pustule lesion. Absolutely. I think it's a medical term.
It is a medical term, but I was like, oh, I feel like I'm going to gross some people out. It's like saying moist too many times in a row. A moist crevice.
Oh, never good. But again, it's not inaccurate. And quite frankly, and I have said this from the beginning of the COVID pandemic, if there had been more visible visual markers like pus-filled lesions instead of it just being a respiratory illness, then people would have taken it more seriously. And it's unfortunate that that is what is necessary for people to go, oh, this seems bad.
I know. And it is bad. And supposedly it's very painful.
Right.
It's not lethal, but it is hearing some of the testimony of people who've gotten it and it leaves like the lesions will leave scarring. Like it's not something to take lightly. It's not speaking of, it's not HPV where now everyone they just assume that you have it if you're under 25.
Right. But that sounds like, the early days of smallpox and other.
Well, it's a form of smallpox. Yeah.
Lovely.
Well, another obstacle besides the health things that could pop up with monkeypox is this incoming freshman class is the first class who spent over half their high school years in COVID.
That's just hard to wrap your brain around, right? But think you were a junior in high school, senior year, pretty much all virtual.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're jumping back to a campus.
And it is across the country. It seems that it's the learning loss that happened for high schoolers is becoming more and more apparent in that with math, science, the issues that have been popping up as being like ready to take college courses is starting to rear its head as far as it was an AP article and this kid named Angel Hope looked at the math test and felt lost. I'm quoting this from the article. He had just graduated near the top of his high school class, winning scholarships from prestigious colleges. But on this test, a University of Wisconsin exam that measures what students learned in high school, all he could do was guess.
That's horrifying.
And the article goes on to talk about how there's countless others like him. And there's all these kids, young adults who are going to school and they are not fully prepared. And the fear is that they'll struggle and then they will drop out.
And get frustrated.
Yeah.
Sure.
And they will be in school, but because they feel like they're failing and all of these different things and they just haven't been set up to succeed, that the worry is that they would drop out. And, I guess one of the things that different universities have tried to create to remedy this is something called bridge programs that are providing summer classes for incoming students, and especially kids, because not shockingly, the kids who've been the most affected by this are lower income,
Sure.
Black and brown kids. And a lot of them chose working over
Instead of school.
Yeah.
Which makes sense.
And it was a steady income.
Sure.
It was, if you were online and no one was paying attention anyways, why do I have to be here? But that was one of the factors that the article attributed to why high school just didn't feel like it mattered. But even though then teachers were grading more leniently,
Mm-hmm.
and thus they were graduating, they were passing, they were graduating at the top of their class, they were getting into schools, but it's really they're not at the point where they need to be. And I don't know, I always have one of the things I feel like I regret most from all of school was this idea that you go to school to get a grade. Right. That like the performance aspect of it. And so the work that you do and the way that you study is like all for the end goal of an A or a B or whatever, versus actually absorbing the information. And like, I think, and I was just having this conversation with someone else who's like, I don't remember anything from college because I always just studied the test.
And that's what that's what you walked away with.
Yeah. Which is not the point. And so even with this, it's that they're going to struggle to get A's or to just be to even know where to approach. And so it'll be interesting to see the stories that come out of this first year, this class of freshmen who probably will have spent the most amount of time of their high school years with lockdowns and virtual online classes, because now things are getting back to normal. And the experts quoted in this article said that largely there is an idea that younger kids will catch up and that they will be able to kind of get back on track before they go to college. But it's really this freshman class that's in this weird gap of 2 to 3 years of high school was online and not very effective, or not as effective as it should have been. And they're all starting college right now. And I'm sure that this won't be the last time we hear of what campuses and college curriculum are trying to do to catch them up.
It's going to be a great opportunity for tutors. And that's something that these young adults are going to have to decide. I don't know. I don't know what tutors cost. I'm sure it's not inexpensive, but these schools might have to come up with some tutoring mentorship programs to help this particular class these next 2 years of kids.
Well, especially because we've, as we've mentioned on the show before, is the push for, at least with the UW system, of trying to attract and recruit more and more kids, because we need in our workforce, we need more college graduates. And so certainly not something that we're going to solve today, but something to keep your eye on as far as what's happening on college campuses and the students who are going there. And hopefully some of these bridge programs can actually serve to get them caught up.
And check in with your kids and find out if they need a tutor. That might be something that you need to talk about as a family.
Absolutely. All right, well, give us a call. Let us know what you think. 844-967-2789. And then when we come back, still on the school thing, what does your grammar say about you? This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
The real estate market in Dane County and surrounding areas has been a bit of a hot mess this year. Listings are being picked off above asking prices and without the home inspection contingencies. I'm Todd Osborne, owner of Orion Inspections, and even if I weren't a home inspector, I'd still cringe a little if any of my friends or family tried to buy a home without an inspection. Let's take a good hard look at that house before you sign. Want to know more? I'm here to help. OrionInspections.com. That's Orion, like the constellation, inspections.com.
Hi, folks. This is Kirk Bankstad at the Minocqua Brewing Company, and I am proud to introduce you to Choice, our new pink grapefruit-flavored hard seltzer. Choice was made in collaboration with Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, and 5% of the proceeds from every can goes to support them and their fight for reproductive freedom. Choice Hard Seltzer tastes great and comes in at only 105 calories per can. Go to our website, MinocquaBrewingCompany.com, to find where you can buy Choice Hard Seltzer.
Hey, it's Kristin Brey from As Goes Wisconsin, which is now a radio show. That's right, I'm taking the same fun and uncomplicated approach to talking about state and local news to the airwaves. Starting July 5th, me and my friends from all parts of the state and all different backgrounds will break down the Wisconsin headlines in a way that informs, entertains, and hopefully makes you laugh. Tune in to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey, Monday through Friday from 12 p.m. to 2 on 101 FM The Shaw and WAUK 540 AM.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show, and we are now on the air in Waukesha, live weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM The Shaw. Turn on, tune in, and help us rebuild the American dream. Check out our website at thericksmithshow.com. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM The Shaw.
I think she's got it. I think she's got it.
The rain in Spain is mainly in the plains.
By George, she's got it. By George, she's got it. Now once again, where does it rain?
On the plain, on the plain.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. That, of course, is from My Fair Lady.
Yes.
which was originally Pygmalion.
Yes.
And that is relevant because apparently, even though I think that's basically what that whole show was about, is improving her Cockney grammar and accent and making her into a high-class British woman.
A lady.
But even now, apparently, there's been studies that have shown this, that your grammar kind of indicates your class, or at least your education. And I thought that was interesting because, so are you good at grammar?
I am. I am not good at punctuation.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I'm fine with apostrophes. Commas and I get along great. It's when we get into colons and semicolons and that kind of stuff that I just fake it.
I feel like unless you're an editor.
Does it matter?
Do you know really the colons are for a list? Semicolons I think are for compound, can be for like sentence, like combining sentences instead of I don't know. Apparently I don't know either. Because I was thinking about this as I read this. It's an opinion piece in the New York Times from Peter Coy titled, "Whom Can Tell One's Social Class Based on Grammar?" And I was trying to think of what in spoken grammar I'm good at and what I'm bad at. And I think I'm usually pretty good at using adverbs instead of adjectives.
For example,
I'm doing well instead of I'm doing good. Or, basically just adding the ly in situations when the adverb is describing the verb and not the adjective describing the noun. What I don't, and it's actually what is used as an example in the article, is when you're the subject versus object of me and I.
Mm-hmm.
And I catch myself every once in a while and I think I've actually seen it on the text line before of saying so-and-so and me, and I'll say, I'll overcompensate and use I when I should say me.
And that sounds correct to me also, though. I would do the same thing.
The trick there is you say, can I say this sentence by saying me, if you drop out the other person?
Okay.
And is it I went to the store or me went to the store? So if it's like Mike and I went to the store, or they got a 6-pack for Mike and I, it should be they got a 6-pack for me and Mike and me, because they got a 6-pack for me if you drop Mike out. That's one that I know when I'm just talking off the cuff that I think I screw up a fair amount.
Wow, you did a really good job explaining that. I will never remember how to do that. I sure wish I would. I'm just going to avoid those sentences entirely.
I'm guessing you don't say whom instead of who, and you should.
Well, the first line of that is, whom can you tell one's social? I wouldn't use whom.
I have corrected people with whom at one point in my life when I was a little bit more of a snob, because I thought I don't know, because I was a jerk. But it's like, for whom are you calling?
But again, it's one of those phrases that unless you know how to use it correctly, you're going to get busted.
Well, and it's also because people don't. So basically, this study by Yale researchers found that listeners have a better than random chance at discerning whether someone has got a college degree by listening to the person speak just 7 words.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's quite something.
Which is 7 words is a lot. I mean, it's not a lot. And so the fact that was really interesting to me. But it also is interesting as far as how you internalize someone else's grammar and what judgments you place on them and how much you don't, because like we just said, I probably screw up grammar all the time, and I certainly have a college degree, but the judgment that we place on people, and does it really matter?
Well, first of all, I think you're very good with words. I do.
Thank you.
I think you have a wonderful command of the English language. At the same time, I am still somewhat of a snob.
Are you?
I am. And I know it's bad, and I know it's unfair, probably in some instances. But Ain't just makes me cringe. And it's so widely accepted now, isn't it? Even in the dictionary?
I think it is in the dictionary.
It's just become part of the English language.
It's another interesting thing that happens online, which is where you often see someone who is making a comment that is not nice, and they will use the wrong your or the wrong there, or some other very common mistake. And the easiest way to dunk back on that person is correct their spelling. But there's also now, or there's the correct their grammar. But now there's also a pushback on correcting people in that.
Shaming the correctors?
Shaming the correctors in that it is like elitist, or it is, because people have dyslexia. And so it's like, instead of going after the comment itself being mean or wrong or missing the point, by just stooping to denigrating their ability to use the right word, it is somehow a bad look because of other people who might not always spell correctly and everything. And so it's like putting this idea, and I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that this is a thing that I have seen on the interwebs.
But I do think that that's a fair point. And the same thing with swearing. If you have to automatically revert to cursing and insults, you have no argument.
Or yeah,
you have no argument. And I have that on my Twitter page. It's like, if you're going to curse and swear at me, then we're not going anywhere.
Or if you make fun of, and I try, I'm not always good at it, but I try not to make fun of what people look like, even when it's someone who deserves to be made fun of. Because it's the can. I always felt bad. There was a joke. There's a Wisconsin representative who had had some diatribe about. I'll tell the story when we get back. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
Hardly happen. How kind of you to let me come.
Now once again, where does it rain?
On the plain, on the plain.
And where's that blasted plain?
In Spain, in Spain.
The rain stays steady in the plain. Oh, the rain stays steady in the plain.
Hey there, fellow working class heroes. I'm Rick Smith, host of The Rick Smith Show, and we are now on the air in Waukesha, live weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM The Shaw. Turn on, tune in, and help us rebuild the American dream. Check out our website at thericksmithshow.com. The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. Weeknights 8 to 10 p.m. right here on WAUK 540 AM, 101 FM The Shaw.
The Devil's Advocates.
Hey, Jenny.
It's up to all of us. It's not just up to Democrats. Are we ready to rid our country of this perversion and deception? Are we sick of massacres at churches, grocery stores, theaters, concerts? Are we sick of adults forcing children who are raped into pregnancy? When is enough that we're going to vote out those fascists?
I'm putting you down for Caller Hall of Fame today. We have to carry these messages, even if the Democratic Party is incapable. You keep it up, sister. Follow the Devil's Advocates on Facebook and Twitter.
You are listening to WAUK 540 AM Jackson, W226DR Waukesha, always streaming at
Comb through the documents taken from former President Donald Trump's Florida estate this month. The AP's Sagar Magani is at the White House.
A specialized filter team has identified a limited set of materials that potentially have attorney-client privileged information. A federal judge had indicated 2 days ago she is inclined to grant Trump's request that a special master be named to oversee the review and ensure any documents protected by legal privilege claims be set aside. In saying the review's already over, Justice Department officials appear to be suggesting naming a special master is now moot. The department says it will comply with the judge's order to submit a more detailed description of just what materials were taken from Mar-a-Lago. Sagar Magani at the White House.
At the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, NASA had to scrap today's scheduled launch of a rocket to the moon. This mission has 3 test dummies on board, but the eventual goal is to have humans on board. The AP's Marcia Dunn reports engine troubles forced the scrub. When will they try again?
NASA only gets 2 weeks at a crack and then has to stand down for 2 weeks. So the current period ends early next week, and then that'll be it until September 19th.
Joshua Pruitt, a man affiliated with the far-right group the Proud Boys, was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison for storming the Capitol on January 6th of last year. He was one of the few Capitol rioters to come face-to-face with a member of Congress that day, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. His security team moved Schumer out of danger. Police say a 5-year-old boy and a 17-year-old man were killed. A toddler was injured in a drive-by shooting in a residential area of Fort Worth, Texas. The search continues for suspects. People in and around Jackson, Mississippi are bracing for possible flooding as the Pearl River approached a crest after last week's heavy rainfall. This is AP News.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a
Hi, Natalie.
but not with
Hi, how's it
How
going?
are you? Good. How are you?
Good.
Good. Thank you for joining on such short notice. I read your article yesterday. I was like, well, I'm going to ping her in the morning and see if she wants to come on.
I appreciate it, and I typically run last minute, so that's
perfect.
Yeah,
Me too.
it's fine for me. I thrive on last minute things, so I was just taking some notes, but hopefully
it can be a pretty casual conversation. You obviously, this is what you work on, and so I'm just going to ask questions and follow-up questions. But pronounce your last name for me.
Eilbert.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for asking. Everyone always thinks they know it, and then they don't.
Trust me, as my last name is pronounced Brey, not Brey. I know that very well.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for saying that. I would have said Brey. So yeah.
Literally, people who've known me for years. I think there were people at my wedding last weekend who still said Brey because they're like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Well, no, it's
well,
Brey."
Congrats on getting married.
Thank you. And then so then just so we'll go through. We'll come back at 1:06. So we still have like 3 minutes. Then the first break's at 1:18, and Jane, my producer, will count down minutes. And then we have a 2-minute break, and then we'll come back. I think we'll save the 988 stuff for when we come back after the break. And then that's like from 1:20 to 1:28, and then I'll give your day back.
That's fine. This is exciting. I had all these interviews this morning, and so this is. I realized I didn't have to set up the interview as normal because I'm not the interviewer, so that was nice. I'm pleasantly just at your mercy.
It's fun because I've been trying since I'm balancing doing stuff with David Haynes and stuff at the Journal Sentinel, and here I'm trying to I need to write a letter this week or an email to the editors this week and be like, hey, I have a radio show, so if anyone wants to come on and talk about their article, I got time to fill. And so I had Frank on last 2 weeks, I think 2 weeks ago, and he was wonderful. And so I gotta go. All right.
General Josh Call says he'll aggressively prosecute anyone who attacks or harasses poll workers. Call told the Associated Press last week Wisconsin's election system was tested over and over through audits, recounts, and reviews, and consistently showed the system works, with the results reflecting the will of the voters. Call says he's planning a PR campaign telling people that intimidating, threatening, or assaulting election workers is illegal. Call, a Democrat running for re-election in November against Fond du Lac County DA Eric Toney. The Packers continue prepping for their first regular season game September 11th on the road against the Vikings. Kickoff at 3:25. Scattered storms today, high 83, partly cloudy tonight, low 59. You're listening to The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
Live programming for WAUK Radio 540 AM and 101 FM is produced right in the Shaw in beautiful downtown Waukesha, Wisconsin.
The Shaw 101 FM, your fix for progressive talk. From Butler to Wind Lake. Always streaming at WAUKradio.com.
Life can get you down, so I just numb the way it feels. I'll drown it with a drink and out-of-date prescription pills. And all the ones that love me.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. This episode for today has been about going back to school. And the first hour, we talked about college kids going back to school or starting college in the first place. But of course, kids under 18 are also starting school last week, this week, next week. But on top of schoolwork, K through 12 students are dealing with a lot more than just that these days. And so there's been a fair amount of evidence that there's an uptick in anxiety, depression, and other behavioral health conditions across all grades and ages, especially here in Wisconsin, according to Wisconsin pediatric professionals. So I found a great article in the Green Bay Gazette this weekend, Press Gazette this weekend, talking about exactly that. So I invited Natalie Eilebert, who is a mental health reporter for USA Today Network in central Wisconsin, to come on and talk to us about this trend and also speak about how parents can help kids' mental health as they are returning to school. So welcome to the show, Natalie.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Kristin.
So it's interesting because I feel like while I was a kid, certainly we had like friends of mine, I had mental health stuff as far as the challenges and emotions and hormones and stuff. But what is different right now as far as it being a more serious uptick than kind of what has always been part of just growing up and being a kid with, heightened emotions?
Yeah, Kristin, there are so many more factors that can lead to chronic stressors in a child's and a young adult's life. First and foremost, of course, we have the pandemic, which it cannot be said enough how much that has upended so much of child's development. That is unfortunately disproportionate in how it breaks down for each whether we're talking about racial and ethnic categories of children or income levels, there was compounding issues within the pandemic. One really huge one, of course, is the isolation that 2 years of remote learning have done, which isn't to say that remote learning wasn't necessary. People were following the CDC and doing the best they could. But of course, that is a really, really critical time for kids to socialize. They get a lot of growth and resilience from peer learning, and that was taken from them. And at the same time, some kids dealt with death, dealt with illness, dealt with grief. So there have been, the Academy of American Pediatrics has sounded the alarms on mental health issues in children for the reasons of caregivers being less in the picture than they usually were, either because they got sick from COVID or because they had to take on multiple jobs or what have you. So there, again, compounding issues from the pandemic, and then mass shootings. It's hard enough to be in a remote setting with your parents in the background dawdling about, but to go back to school with this really unpredictable threat that maybe a shooter is going to come through a back door, or, the shooter is among us. There've been hundreds of thousands of school shooting or of deaths and injuries from school shootings in the last decade. So of course, that is really, those two factors are super scary for kids, understandably. And at least I didn't have either of these issues growing up. I mean, I grew up with Columbine, of course, when I was in middle school, but it didn't have the same effect.
It wasn't the same. We must be similar ages, because I was in just entering middle school when Columbine happened, and I remember we had bomb threats randomly, and that were never turned out to be anything. But it was like a long fire drill where we got to like skip class and then we'd be out for a while. But it wasn't scary in the same way, and it didn't feel real in the same way that what I can only imagine now of doing the active shooter drills in something that feels very real because it happens so often, and what kind of lasting, I don't know if trauma is the right word just by doing the drills, but kind of, right? As far as the experience of, oh, I'm not safe anywhere ever. And you've learned that from a really young age because of these drills.
Right. And, those active shooter drills themselves can be traumatic. I was talking to a children's pediatrician, Marcia Slattery, about this, and, doing things like code black, which is when you turn the lights out, hide, and just not be seen. That's usually in silence. And Marcia was saying that leaving children in this state of fear, even though there isn't anything actually wrong, can be pretty scary and have lasting effects, because of course you're preparing for a possible scenario that is every day less unlikely as we hear more and more about school shootings. So yeah, even the active shooter drills can have an adverse effect on kids.
I mean, I was looking this weekend, there's even a Wisconsin Dells company called Bluestone Safety that's making bulletproof backpacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many things like that, and no matter what, at the end of the day, the students are the ones who have to deal with the question of, do I get bulletproof backpacks? Do I not go to school on days where I see on Snapchat someone made a bomb threat? Do I do this? Do I not do that? We always hear about those survivor's guilt scenarios where someone doesn't go to school on the day of a shooting, so it can't be said enough how big of an effect that has on kids.
We're talking to mental health reporter for USA Today Network in Central Wisconsin, Natalie Eilbert, about, I guess, kind of, at first we're talking about the uptick in the trend of what we're seeing with kids. But what you wrote about is also what parents can do to prioritize and uplift their kids. And so what are some of those tactics that you've, either through different pediatric specialists, or what have you found as far as what is tangible advice for parents to take?
Yeah. So the number one thing I hear, the number one bit of advice is to communicate with your child. And that seems so simple, but it's not enough to just have a conversation at dinner time. Scheduling a time to really sit down and talk to your kid, whether it's on your way to dropping them off at school, whether it's before bedtime, just checking in and having an actual real conversation. Like, how are you feeling today? Was there anything that you experienced that you'd like to talk about? Sometimes even adding, your own experience of the day. Like, I had this happen today and that bothered me. What about you? So just having some sort of routine where you can talk to your kid, which dovetails nicely into the other bit of advice, which is to have routine. As we said, there's so many possibilities here of things going wrong we are, the lack of predictability has thrown kids for a loop. So having a real structure can be so good for a kid's mental health. Knowing when dinner time is, knowing when homework time is, having extracurricular activities scheduled out. And even at times when it's difficult and there aren't as many known factors, sitting down with your kid and doing some problem solving. Again, Marcia Slattery from Children Pediatrics at UW Health said that something you could do is you take a piece of paper, on one side, you write all of your worries down, and on the other side, you write possible solutions to that worry. I, as an adult, would love that. And I started doing it myself. And, I'm in my 30s, and it actually has already done wonders to my health to be able to say, I have this, like any number of existential worries. And obviously, I'm not going to be able to solve issues like gun violence or climate change, but I can do this. So doing that would be really powerful and palatable for your child.
Natalie, how important is it also to get your kids off social media? I just see so many stories about how, especially young girls' self-esteem is being destroyed by TikTok and all those kinds of things.
That is a really, really good question. Having, again, it goes down to routine. You would want to make sure that, your kid is going to have a specific amount of time that they are on social media. I would say removing social media would be a bad idea because, when you tell someone not to do something, they do it tenfold, especially young people. But, just allotting time and also making sure when your kid is on social media that they know what's real and what is unrealistic. Just having conversations about that, I think would be good. But yeah, just making sure there's time allotted to it and that there's enough time to do other things like be outside with friends or inside with friends.
It's funny how often like you were just saying with the exercise of this two sides of paper, or the exercise of limiting how much social media you have. It's like the things that are good for us as a full-blown adults are also very good for kids when it comes like it's, helping children process their emotions. But I know plenty of adults who don't know how to process their emotions and don't have the language to identify feelings and how that translates into behavior and how to stop something, but like that your emotions, not letting your emotions control your behavior, but letting yourself feel emotions, and so many of these things that it takes effort to learn how to even do those things. And whether you're a kid or an adult, if you don't have someone who can kind of help you learn how to do that, we're going to end up in they all end up in the same spot of not being able to do it at all.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said about a mirroring, right? Wellness mirror. If your parent is always on social media, you'll probably feel you're permitted to do it too. If you're always panicking and stressed, your kid's probably going to be panicked and stressed too. So being a good model, I think, is foremost for parents.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to take a quick break, but Natalie's going to be here with us when we get back to talk about more about this and also how the 988 hotline is doing since it started this summer. Natalie Eilbert is the mental health reporter for USA Today in Central Wisconsin, and this is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
And before I blame someone else, I've got to save myself. And before I love someone else, got to love.
Hi, everyone. Listen to my show, The Matt McNeil Show, weekday afternoons at 3 p.m. on the Shaw 101. 1 hour every weekday where we'll talk all sorts of things like politics, especially with what's going on this election season, plus a lot of other things, too. Parenting, the arts, religion, music, beer. If it matters to Wisconsin and Minnesota, we'll talk about it. Phone calls are welcome at 952-946-6205 for 1 hour each day. Come see the train chimp, The Matt McNeil Show, with the aggressive progressive Matt McNeil, 3 p.m. weekday afternoons right here on the Shaw 101.
Hey, this is Matt from Design Garden. Remember when the internet was new? Back then, you had to leave your house to start a business. Companies used to pay programmers bags of cash to get online. Now, small businesses can get online with a Facebook business page, or Squarespace, or Google My Business, or WordPress. But which tools should you use? Can you afford to go down the wrong path? Design Garden uses modern tools to build your website the right way. Find us online at design.garden. Again, that's design.garden.
Conservative talk radio, they don't want to hear your opinion. They want to give you your opinion. They've done a good job. There's a way out. You can escape. Just turn on 540 AM WAUK, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m., Monday through Friday. And we can help you get out. We can teach you to think again.
Catch the Earl Ingram Show weekdays from 8 to 11 a.m. here on the Shaw 101 FM and WAUK 540 AM.
Hey, it's Pizza Box Mike. I've got a show outside the Pizza Box. Be sure to listen on Saturdays at noon on Double Radio. Some of us, were meant to run for public office, and some of us were meant to run others out. And that's the side I come from.
What is dedication?
I think a parent's job is to protect our children, but also prepare them for the world so they become good, kind human beings.
That's dedication. Find out more at fatherhood.gov.
I've been praying for somebody to save me. No one's heroic in my life, don't even matter. I know it, I know I'm hurting deep down, but can't show it. I never had a place to call my own. I never had a home.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. We are talking with Natalie Eilbert, who is the mental health reporter for USA Today in the central Wisconsin area, but probably across Wisconsin, I would imagine. I mean,
Yes.
is there another mental health reporter in the Gannett USA Today Wisconsin network?
No, I am in fact the very first person to be in this role. So I am, yeah.
Which I think
I am it.
is credit to where we've come as a society to know that these are issues that we need to be not only talking about, but reporting on. And so since taking on this role, what have you learned, or what is it like to be a mental health reporter in Wisconsin these days?
Well,
It's a big question,
like,
so take it wherever you
yeah,
want.
it sounds like it's so specific, but it is its own universe. Mental health I can turn a mental health story out of anything: politics, school, climate change, crime. All of it has its own mental health cosmos to it. And yeah, I mean, so to be a mental health reporter it's fun in some ways. It's challenging in others. That you're not seeing. There's often not a visible component to a mental health struggle. So I have to take people's word that they are, having a mental health episode, or that things are harder right now because of data. I spend a lot of time looking at data and talking to families.
Yeah. And one of it was interesting because as I found your article about kids going back to school, one of the other articles you wrote this month, which is funny because Jane and I just, as we're preparing for stories that we wanted to cover for September, which is Suicide Prevention Month, we were curious of what's the status of the 988 crisis line, because I know that was such a big deal when it was at the end of June that it first launched. And this is a line that is a separate 3-digit number you can call and get routed to a mental health specialist and counselor to talk to. And I know it was such a big deal when it launched, but we both were asking, I wonder what the status is. And lo and behold, you actually wrote an article about how, at least in Wisconsin, what the increase in calls has been since that 3-digit number was so publicized and gone live. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's so many reasons for why Wisconsin people call, but one of the things I learned is that, in the last month of its launch, there have been over 4,400 calls to 988, which I was not surprised to hear. But they've emphasized, they being Wisconsin Department of Health Services and Family Services, which is a Wisconsin-based services agency. They said that they're doing a soft launch, similar to how 911 was launched in 1968. they're, just seeing how it goes and taking it one step at a time. But you had mentioned suicide, and what's interesting about that is that only about 30% of the calls that come in specifically address suicide. 98 can be a preventative and is largely a preventative crisis hotline. So, which of course, there's so much evidence to suggest that preventing crisis before it becomes critical is going to do so much for your own mental health capacity on an everyday level. So, yeah.
Natalie, that's really one of the hardest parts too, isn't it? Making that first phone call has got to be intimidating and terrifying.
Yeah. And I think some of that, or I would say a lion's share of the reason for that is stigma. This fear that by admitting you have an issue, you are some sort of problem scenario, or you've problematized the situation. But the thing that's really powerful about this is it's confidential, and you can just talk to somebody and say, hey, I'm going through a hard breakup. I'm going through a hard time at school. And the person on the other line is trained to talk to you about all sorts of issues with your mental health, and they can give you tips and just talk to you about it. This is especially powerful because we are in the midst of a pretty significant therapy shortage, not just
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah. So, I mean, of course this isn't a silver bullet to that problem. Of course, we need to fix that problem. But in the meanwhile, people can talk to someone for free, confidentially, 24/7, and they can have at least some sort of reprieve from this feeling of being alone and suffering silently.
Because whether it was, again, for kids and going to school, or and also for adults, both the challenge of the wait lists to talk to a professional, and also health insurance. And we don't necessarily make it easy to get professional help. And so to have some kind of stopgap, so you have someone to talk to, feels like a good start. And so I'm relieved to hear that it's been such an uptick. It sounds like, as far as how many people have called and are getting at least an ear and someone to talk to who is trained to give them tips or advice, or gives them some tools to make it through another day. But we're running out of time, so I want to make sure people can find your work, and whether it's on Twitter or follow you and all of your articles throughout all of the Wisconsin Gannett properties. But where can people find you, Natalie?
Yeah, they can find me on Twitter. I'm either posting about articles or my cats. And so I'm at Natalie_Eilbert, EILBERT. I'm happy to take any questions or DMs people have, but anything we talked about today, I'm pretty responsive on the big wild internet. So get in touch with me if you have any specific issues that you have.
Absolutely. And we'll definitely have you back on the show, because I'm sure this will not be the last interesting article that you write that I want to hear more about. So thank you, Natalie Eilbert, so much for joining us today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much, Kristin.
We'll be back after the break. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
Thank you all. I don't know if I can talk, but thank you.
The Shaw 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM, Wisconsin's home for rational talk radio.
Who doesn't love laser tag? iCombat gives you that and so much more. It's a real-life video game experience. iCombat's perfect for birthday parties, special events, corporate team building, or just blasting away at your friends. iCombat has $20 Thursday night specials, and kids of all ages are welcome. iCombat at 1023 Spring City Drive off Sunset. For more info, go to iCombatWaukesha.com. iCombat is a proud sponsor of the Black Shirt Football radio broadcast. Gear up, squad up, prepare for iCombat laser tag.
My fine guest, Maggie Dawn, attorney at law. I thought that the laws of the United States were supposed to evolve with societal norms. The vast majority of Americans, 70% approximately, believe that Roe v. Wade should be the law of the land. So that seems exactly contrary to the way the courts are supposed to evolve with our nation.
I'll just say this. The guy in Colorado can't be forced to make a gay wedding cake, but I can be forced to make a baby. I don't know about you, but that makes no damn sense to me.
I'm Ed Donahue with an AP News Minute. According to court documents, the Justice Department's review has ended of potentially privileged documents seized from former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate in Florida.
They've overcome a number of them, but we ran into one that we need a little more time to look at.
The next launch attempt may be Friday at the earliest. It could be delayed until mid-September or later. A man is under arrest in Detroit, charged with randomly shooting and killing 3 people. Mayor Mike Duggan says a tip led police to make the arrest.
Somebody close to him did respond, and it was that community input that allowed the police officers to take this individual into custody without any further violence.
Police in Bend, Oregon say a man who shot and killed 2 people inside a supermarket began in a residential neighborhood of apartment complexes and continued his rampage in the parking lot before entering the store. The gunman was later found dead. I'm Ed Donahue.
We tried Dynovite nutritional supplement, and after a couple of weeks, we noticed a big difference. Our little Gizmo's coat was shinier, and there was a lot less scratching and shedding.
My dog smelled and scratched constantly. We bathed and sprayed her, took her to the vet, but no results. Now, a little Dynovite in her food helps Bella keep her beautiful coat with no scratching or smell.
Happier, healthier with every bite. Over 1 million pets helped with Dynovite.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
For Civic Media, I'm Jane Matnair with your headlines. Discussions continue over when and how Wisconsin should spend its growing budget surplus. The State Department of Revenue reporting last week the general fund tax collections for fiscal 2022 came in at more than $20.5 billion. It's estimated Wisconsin could end up with a $5 billion surplus by next summer. Last week, Governor Evers called on the GOP-led legislature to use a portion of the money to cut taxes, reduce fuel prices by repealing the state's minimum markup on gas, and cap insulin copays at $35. GOP Assembly Speaker Robin Vos and Republican Senate Majority Leader Devin LeMahieu called Evers' proposal a tax gimmick. If Evers loses in November, GOP leaders say they plan to pass their own tax cuts under a Republican governor. Scattered storms today, high 83, partly cloudy tonight, low 59. You're listening to The Shaw, 101 FM, WAUK 540 AM.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey. Today's episode has been about kids going back to school, which means a lot of different things. In college, it means parties and potentially monkeypox. And it also means, am I prepared to actually go take college courses? For kids, K through 12, it's coming back into things that have not been normal for a long time and what that can do to both curriculum and to mental health. But for teachers and families, it also means buying stuff.
School supplies.
And so I was curious because, so I have As Goes Wisconsin as its own LLC because when I started it in 2020, I had gotten a grant. And so it's just easier to function as a business. And so as a business, there's a lot I can write off.
That's nice.
Right? It's like when I had to fix my computer last year, I could write that off. And not to be confused with David Rose, who doesn't know what a write-off is, but he's like, oh, the government pays for it. But, there's a lot of things I can, as a small business owner, I still have to pay for it, but as far as that
You get a
lowering,
break.
lowering my taxable income for the business at the end of the year. And there's no like cap on it.
So unlimited.
Well, I mean, it
As
has
long
to
as you
it
can
has to
justify
fall
it.
into the categories, but yeah, so it, like as long as it falls into the categories, I don't have a cap. So knowing that we were going to do this topic and knowing that teachers are employed by either school districts or private schools or whatever, they don't have their own company set up. But I was like, I wonder if they can expense any of the school supplies that they buy for their school. And they can, but it's only up to $250.
That's absurd.
Yeah. So
That's
it's
absurd.
an eligible educator can deduct up to $250 of any unreimbursed business expenses for the classroom materials, such as books, supplies, computers. Who's buying a computer for $250? And I just kind of thought that I will totally call myself out that there is no reason that I should be able to expense the amount of stuff that I can expense. Not that I'm taking advantage, but I can write off a lot of stuff as a business owner, and that teachers who are so underpaid already are largely on the hook for decorating their classrooms and having supplies in there. And the most that they can even write off is $250.
What I don't understand is they have an employer who is supposed to take care of these things. As far as I understand it, we work for a company. It's not Jane and Kristin, you guys have to go buy your own microphones and bring them in every day. I'm sure there are some businesses, I think, for stylists, for hairstylists. They move from salon to salon. They own their own scissors.
They rent their chair.
They rent their chair, things like that. But is there any other profession that requires their employees to subsidize what they need to do their jobs?
Well, there's, as we've talked about before, there's MLMs, which is a little different than being an elementary school teacher.
Yeah. I mean, but lawyers don't.
Well, I mean, that goes back to, because this is, and I think we'll get into this deeper later this week, but public schools seeking record $1.9 billion in spending authority from through referendums in Wisconsin. So there's like 50 different districts that have referendums on their November ballot for their school district on trying to get approval from their constituents to help fund the schools, because the state budget isn't doing enough. And so that's a different topic, but it comes back to, it's just, and so anyways, there was an article that talked about teachers and in Wisconsin and talking about them trying to get prepared for the classroom. I think we have some of this from WLUK TV.
You saved $41.21, so $269.01 is your total.
Rebecca Lehman is in her fourth year teaching first grade at Valley Christian School in Oshkosh. She's felt the inflation on her back to school bill.
Yeah, some of us were a little surprised by some of the ticket items. Things have definitely gone up a little bit in price, but obviously we want to make our classrooms fun and exciting.
Lehman says she likes incorporating hands-on activities and games. She says her budget changes from year to year depending on who's in her class.
So if you have a student with sensory needs, you might have to start supplying in your things for your classroom to meet those students' needs.
A recent study from the national nonprofit group adoptaclassroom.org says teachers spent an average of $750 on school supplies out of pocket during the 2020 to 2021 school year.
So yeah, going back to that 250 number, that's a third.
Why do they have to pay out of pocket to buy the basic essentials that their students need? There are all kinds of GoFundMes. There are fund specific to fund schoolrooms.
Yeah.
I have done this with a group of people who were fans of the Iditarod, who funded all these schools along the Iditarod Trail in Alaska. What else is funded in this way that's for a greater good?
Yeah. Well, because in that same piece, it says while the average across the country is $750, the woman who was interviewed in that said it's very easy for teachers to spend $500, which is still double what they would get reimbursed for. And one of the things I didn't think about is if you're a new teacher, because I was trying to think back, and it's, the way that teachers decorate their classroom, and they decorate it for the holiday and what season it is, and it changes, and it's fun to walk into the classroom and see new stuff on the board. But if you're brand new, it's not like you have the stuff from last year. So like there's the upfront cost of being a first year teacher to get those decorations and those projects. And some of it obviously you can save and then put up next year, but you're just, and so that is a mess. But it's also, I mean, it's also families, right? It's families who have to pay. And if you have multiple kids, the amount of stuff that you have to go back. I mean, so they were saying, say, $750 for a teacher. But also, this is families with children in elementary through high school plan to spend an average of $864 getting prepared for school.
Per child?
No, I think this was the average per family.
Okay.
And I'm sure, but still, that's a lot of money to drop in, August, and just like, all right, because it's backpacks and it's clothes and
Shoes.
it's yeah. And so the journal, not the Journal Sentinel, but there was USA Today in Wisconsin took a list from Target.com, which offered a school list assist feature. So you could search for your school and your grade level, and then it generates a list of items that you would need. And so they took the different supply lists for a first grader, a seventh grader, and a high school freshman in central Wisconsin. And for first grade in Stevens Point, there was 32 items and it was $93, that's including tax. And so this is obviously just so the items for school.
Sure.
It's not if you're buying your kid a new backpack or you're buying
none of that stuff, nothing, clothes or shoes or anything.
Seventh grade for a middle school in Wausau was $204. And ninth grade in Wisconsin Rapids was 35 items for $179. So if you don't have the money,
that's steep. It is. And just as we've talked before about how the price of things have gone crazy, cars, homes, everything. I can't even imagine. I haven't looked at a backpack in 45 years. I can't even imagine what they run, but I'm sure they're more than $20 now.
But it also, and this is, you're the more cynical one of the two of us, but
no, that's shocking.
But I was thinking about, I feel like with all of the inflation talk of this whole summer, but even before the summer, the push and pull of what is increased labor cost, what is supply and demand and supply chain issues, and what is just
greed.
And it's hard for me to imagine, like, why are some of these things more expensive? Like sometimes with food, I can get it. Gas, I got like for refineries and stuff, but notebooks and backpacks, like I don't really know. And I'm sure someone has done research in this and I just haven't found it as far as
why things are so expensive.
Why this would get inflation would also be in these school supplies. But that's of course where my brain goes, that there's someone benefiting off of these poor families.
Well, unfortunately, I don't think that that's far off.
Yeah.
And I think people operating certainly a business out of altruistic reasons is going to have a much tougher time against a competitor who does not have altruistic reasons.
Like Katie Lorenz, who has very altruistic reasons.
Right. Oh, what a great business model that is.
Yeah.
But it is disappointing, and that we are still driven by such base animal instincts. It's power, sex, and greed.
And I guess power is maybe also influence.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. Well, to bring it back to be a little happier, in this same article that I found from Journal Sentinel and Wausau Daily Herald, you can find it there. They list different ways you can help if you are in a position and you would like to help families who are trying to get supplies for their kids. There's Fill a Backpack, Fill a Need in Wausau. United Way of Portage County's Project Fresh Start is collecting items at their office in Stevens Point. Marshfield Area United Way's Supply for Success program is collecting school supplies at their office in, where is that? Marshfield. United Way of Southwood and Adam Counties Stuff the Bus program is also accepting donations. So we'll link this to our social media so you can help out if you can, because
The need is out there.
The need is out there.
The need is definitely out there.
I'm sure, like you said, there's probably GoFundMes for different teachers in different classrooms that are trying to get funded. But yeah, it is. This is not making me want to have children.
Well,
and I say this after being in Madison this weekend and watching my kids who have kids. We went to the Orton Park Festival, which is on the east side. It's by Willie Street. And my ovaries were on fire because
there were munchkins everywhere.
I had one couple that lives there and they have an 18-month-old. Another couple who was in Madison for the month. They have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. And then my friend who has almost like a 3.5-year-old. And all of the kids were like hugging each other and they'd never met. They were all hugging each other and they were just running around and so happy. And of course it was Madison. So it was just like this like very good like hippy dippy vibe because it was the east side of Madison, and watching these kids, and then they were hugging me and loved me. And I was like, this is so fun. I can't wait to have kids. And then listening to all of this, like the stress of trying to send kids to school and how things are not funded and falling apart. I was like, I does not feel as warm and fuzzy as playing with those children yesterday did.
Well, and I'm sure if you had asked their parents, are they like this all the time? They would have just laughed.
That is true.
Aloud. There's a lot parents, I think, bury when they're sharing stories about their children.
See, you are more cynical than me.
Oh, without it. My father was a mortician, Kristin. I started death and worked my way back.
Well, like I said, I think we will post different ways to help as far as how kids are going back to school and needing supplies, because I think that's important in a simple way, especially if you have hand-me-down stuff that is still in pretty good shape that you can pass on for someone else to love. But I think later this week we'll get more into these public school referendums across the state, because there's 70 referendum questions.
Wow, I had no idea that
70
that
referendum
many.
questions on the November ballot across 50 different school districts.
That's crazy.
And we don't set the new budget until next summer. I mean, next year, really, right?
And that's going to make a big difference who's in the governor's mansion.
But though, yeah, and the whole, I mean, especially because what did Tom Michaels say in the debate, that like we just keep throwing money at schools and it's not fixing the problem? And it's like, wait, what? But anyways, all right. Well, we only have one segment left. After such a rocky start, we've been smooth sailing for the last hour and a half. Shh. All right. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin Brey.
WAUK and the Shaw are the new kids on the radio block. And that block happens to be on Wisconsin Ave, Waukesha. Now is a great time to advertise locally with 540 AM and the Shaw 101 FM, while the ads are inexpensive and the audience is rapidly growing. Sponsorships available for This Week in Waukesha, Raised in the Shaw, or live local music on the weekends. Spring packages starting at just $495 a month. Get started today by emailing info@waukradio.com.
If you think you need a home inspection, you probably do. Hi, I'm Todd Osborne of Orion Inspections. And buyers, sellers, and even flippers, I'm talking to you. Knowledge is power when it comes to real estate transactions. You'll get an image-packed, searchable, digital, printable report of the condition of the house, things to keep an eye on, any safety issues or defects, and the knowledge to make smart, informed decisions. Your instinct is telling you to get an inspection, and instincts are usually right. Learn more or schedule today at orioninspections.com.
President Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election.
Collectively, Republicans got 1.661 million votes, 51,000 more votes than Trump got.
He exhausted his cases. He exhausted the court challenges.
All the Republicans voted for Trump the way they voted for the assembly candidates, and he would have won.
It was not rigged. It was not stolen. Donald Trump lost the election. Joe Biden won the election. It's really clear.
This message was paid for by the People for People Corporation. Donate online at p4ppc.org.
Let me tell you about Ruby Isle Auto in Milwaukee. They're family owned, and John, Kathy, Jim, and Corey have been in business over 40 years. Ruby Isle Auto is located at 11137 West Silver Spring Drive, right off of I-41. And if you mention WAUK 540 AM or the Earl Ingram Show, you get $10 off your oil change. Schedule today by calling 414-438-1900. Ruby Isle Auto, your friends in the car business.
Always got the right one at the wrong time. This time it's heartbreaking. You've always got the right one at the
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin, Brey. So after we were at the end of the last hour, we were talking about grammar.
Yes.
And while this text did not come over through the text line, which
you can always use.
967-2789, 844-96-PARTY. That's the one. I feel like I need to just get it memorized. Party is easier.
Party is easier.
844-96-PARTY.
There you go.
There we go. This text did not come through the text line. It came to my personal phone, and it was from Miss Debbie Brey, who said, because we were talking about what drives you nuts is the word ain't. And
verbally,
people
yeah,
said,
we're talking about verbal things.
And she said, I hate ain't too, Jane. And Kristin, your grammar Nazi mom is constantly bugged by your radio ad in which you say, me and my friends. Haven't said anything because I don't want to be a snob. I actually, to her credit, I did hear that one day, but we had already recorded it. I was like, oh, crap.
So is it my friends and I?
No, it'd be my friends and me. Because so go back. And so join me and as we talk about this, instead of join my friends and me as we talk about this.
So as long as you can take out the other noun, then you use me.
Well, that's the test.
Yeah, this is never.
So it's the difference between the subject or the object of the of the sentence, and
I'm getting the shakes like I have a math test that's a word problem.
But you're a really good speller.
I am a good speller.
I remember that you said you attribute that to your nuns.
No question about it. We had spelling tests and weekly, daily, and that's something that I remember very specifically doing with my mother at the kitchen table.
Okay.
And I've always been very proud of that, and I like words. I've always liked words. I loved books as a kid. Books saved my life. Books opened up the world for me. And so that's why I'm kind of a word snob. I apologize.
What are you a word? I wouldn't think of you as a word snob, but I mean, just because you don't like the word ain't.
But there's other, as we were talking about before, I will unfairly make assumptions about people depending upon some of the words that they choose to use or how they frame a sentence. And ain't is probably the most glaring example that I can think of, but there are other just double negatives, things like that. And I will find myself looking askance at them, even though they're probably a very fine human being.
I feel like I judge people's writing more than their speaking.
Really?
Well, I say this because literally this morning I was laying in bed and waking up. I was reading the caption. I don't know how I think there was I somehow went down some rabbit hole of like uber famous TikTokers that like are in Hollywood. And we're talking about children who are 18, 19, 20. And I don't follow these people, but they're famous in the world of that. And I read one, I was on their Instagram and I read one of their captions, which was just basically 4 sentences with 0 punctuation and just made no sense. It was just gibberish. And this is a person who has 45 million followers on Instagram. And she's 18, 19. And also dropped out of school and went to Hollywood, and she's very successful and probably is making enough money on sponsors and brand deals and stuff that she doesn't need to finish high school. But reading her caption as she was wishing happy birthday to her sister, and it was just like, there's no sentence to be found here. Like there's no beginning, end. It's just multiple thoughts with 0 punctuation and 0 capitalization. And I was like, oh God, you poor girl.
Isn't that part of the fallout though from Twitter, which has a limited amount of characters, So if you want to make your point, you can get more words in if you skip punctuation.
That is true.
And also just with sending text messages. I want to get this out to you as quickly as possible. I don't want to have to, because I'm so bad that when I send messages after a period, I will double space.
Mike does that.
Because that's what we were taught to do.
Do you sign Jane?
No.
You do with
That
Jane?
I finally stopped. but I started
I know it's you. You're saved in my phone.
I started out doing that. It's like, just in case you're not sure, this is me.
Well, yes. But I think, I find Twitter, and I think a lot of comedians also find Twitter to be useful because of the limited characters, is that you have to get to the point. So it actually makes you a better writer, because often almost all of the writing advice you get, specifically with comedy, but I think in general, is eliminating unnecessary words. And how can you say this shorter, faster, to the point? And it's a way to be a clearer communicator. And I know for me, since starting Twitter in 2020 with As Goes Wisconsin, certainly constantly trying to find, like, once you hit that red, then you're like, well, you can't post this. You got to make it shorter.
What am I going to do?
And as I posted every day post for the show every day of what's coming on the show, sometimes it'll be abbreviations, and it's a lot of switching A-N-D to the symbol and to save a couple characters here or there. But still, like, I need it to make sense. I need it to be complete thoughts and not just
gibberish.
Yes. And and I don't have 45 million followers.
Yet. Not yet.
That's a lot of people. I don't think I ever want 45 million followers.
We'll shoot for 4 million.
It sounds like a lot of noise.
We'll just have a goal
of
we'll have a goal of 4 million.
Yes.
Don't you think?
4 million listeners a day. That's a lot.
That would be huge.
Speaking of a lot of followers, I don't know how you feel about the reign of Joe Rogan as the highest like the most downloaded podcaster or streamed podcaster on Spotify, but at least for this week, his reign has ended.
Really?
Meghan Markle premiered and her podcast had more streams than Joe Rogan.
Oh, I'm sure he's going to have a long episode about that. For which I will not be tuning in.
Well, that's it. He interviewed Aaron Rodgers, and my brother's like, you really got to listen to it. I was like, aren't they 3 hours long? And I shouldn't say anything because we're about to be 3 hours long starting next Tuesday.
But we talk about different things over the course of 3 hours.
That's true.
And different angles of things. What I find disturbing about Joe Rogan is the specific audience he has zeroed in on. And I think they all need some minor counseling.
We should have him talk to Natalie.
Absolutely. Let's hook him up.
All right. Well, this was this show started off a little rocky, but now we know what was causing the issue. So if it ever happens again, we know how to solve it quickly. So, those little trials and errors, and you learn more for the next time to do better. So thank you for sticking with us today. If you made it through the beginning echoey parts of the show, thanks for sticking around. We really appreciate you.
Note to self: figure out how to fix earlier problem from today.
All right, we'll be back tomorrow. This is As Goes Wisconsin with Kristin and Brey.